Sam here. You join me for an ownership review in my Mark 7 Golf R. So I'm going to tell you basically everything that I know about this car. I'll be coming up to the 6th year of ownership next year. So this is probably one of the best ownership videos you're going to get to watch on a Mark 7 Golf R. I purchased this car back in June, July 2017. Today, well, we're in December 2022, so I've had it a fair amount of time. I purchased this as an ex-demonstrator car from Volkswagen up in Manchester, and I have completed about 43,500 miles in the car. So I've done a fair amount and I've absolutely loved the car, but I'm going to share both the positives and the negatives, give sort of like a fair overview of what you can kind of expect from this kind of car. So yeah, for example, my car, as you can see just here, is a 3-door. It's a manual. I'll show some clips on screens as well. It's the Mark 7 generation, so you get some like physical dials. Yeah, infotainment there, very Golf like, just like the Mark 7. So where should I start with this one? So I'm a big VW Audi Group type fan, big fan of the Golf R. I love a car that can kind of do absolutely everything, yet can be under the radar. This car has 300 horsepower and 4-wheel drive, which I think for most people is more than enough. I found it more than adequate power, plenty to have fun with on a back road, plenty on normal day-to-day driving, more than enough. And the 4-wheel drive means you can actually put all the power down. The one thing I will say, and potentially a little bit of a negative actually on my kind of car, is I have a 6-speed manual. Now, it's a good, it's a good gearbox. It's fun to use. The clutch is quite heavy and quite firm, so you have to kind of adjust to that. If I had my time again, I would probably get the DSG Auto. I think it suits the car a little bit more. I think it suits sort of the German efficiency, if that makes sense, from what VW were kind of looking for. But I can't really complain. The manual does save a little bit of weight, which I suppose can improve a few things. That's kind of where I was always going from. And they are cheaper as well to get into, although there's not that many manuals around. So conversely, they actually hold their money quite well, whereas you can get a DSG. It's relatively simple to kind of look online. There's loads of Golf Rs available on Auto Trader, and for me, the Mark 7 is the pick of the range. Now, they did do a Mark 7.5 facelift, which is pretty much exactly the same, except they just changed a bit of the styling. Yeah, so whichever is your kind of preference, go for that. They did have a confusing spell up until about 2018 with that facelift, where they gave the car an extra 10 horsepower. They had to drop that back due to emissions issues and due to the fact that compliance, they had to put like OPFs in the car, and it just unfortunately ruined a lot of things. I love cars before that era, so for me, I would look for a car basically on a 67 plate or below. That's what I would be looking for. You could also get the incredible Akrapovic exhaust, which I have heard and sounds unbelievable on the car. This car sounds really good to me. Makes a few burbles and stuff when you kind of lift off over 3,000 RPM. Really, really nice. 2-litre turbocharged engine, so it's never going to sound like amazing, like a naturally aspirated car. Say like take the old R32, but it's good enough. It sounds perfectly fine. That Akrapovic exhaust, by the way, if you purchase that new, is about £3,500, but it's quite a good investment to kind of get a car with that, because the exhausts are still kind of worth that today. So basically, if you wanted it and it's attached to your car, and I don't know, maybe you wanted to cash in a little bit, you could almost sell the exhaust as parts and get a standard exhaust on it and get cash like £3,000. That's a potential option maybe. My car has passive dampers. You can get Golf Rs with DCC, dynamic chassis control, which is great. It just makes the car a bit more comfortable and then firmer when you kind of want it. The passive setup is quite firm, but I find it tolerable, so it's up to you to kind of test it out, see what you think. One thing which is quite cool in a Golf, you get a traction control button, and unlike the GTIs or anything like that, you can actually switch the traction control fully off. So you have a sport mode, which sort of does a halfway house, then you have fully off. Now, I took it fully off because there's some fun roads up here where I'm in Bedfordshire, and the roads are great, and it just gives you that more sort of control over the car. Basically, when you put your foot down, it's not restricting any power. That's what traction control kind of does. You go into a corner and you put your foot down and the traction control goes, nah, you can't do this. But by turning it off, it allows you, and it just allows, I often find it allows the back end to sort of play a little bit more, just a little bit looser, because four-wheel drive, it can be quite, yeah, very benign and straight and knows what it's going to do. And also, I don't like putting my foot down and then suddenly you get a spike of power when it wants you to. I want to be in control. I like that. And that's quite a cool feature of this kind of car. I love the lights. They're really white. I think they're like bi-xenons, but they're really bright white lights. And they work fantastically. I've had this car, like I said, for nearly 6 years now, and there's plenty of bumps, plenty of potholes. I've done plenty of motorway driving. I've done plenty of driving overall, and they've never sort of died on me, if that makes sense. The rears as well. And that's something that I can't say about other cars. I was forever replacing bulbs in, like, to be honest, my last Ford Fiesta. That's what I was doing. The rear bulbs, the rear lights would always go. Because these are LEDs, they might cost a little bit more when and if they do go wrong, or if you smash them up, like a heavy stone or something like that. But they are very, very good. The one thing you've got to watch out for, we're in December, so it's quite wintry and frosty. Actually, when I got to the car this morning, it was completely frosted over. And I don't know if it's something that just depends on the weather, but you can get sometimes condensation in the bi-xenon lights just at the front. Something to watch out for. But I think it's because the bi-xenons heat up quite a lot, particularly if you have it on auto on the lights all the time. But it goes away, and as long as it doesn't get too much water in there, basically it's over the top, so the lights aren't really doing their job. It's generally fine. Mine's been okay. Yeah, maybe it's potentially where you store it as well and how often you drive it. For me, cars are there to be driven, so drive your car and enjoy it, and you will have less issues for it. Don't just, if you sit in a car with like 10,000 miles, if this car had done hardly any miles, I'd expect to probably have more issues than I actually have. Build quality has been really good. It's a really nice actual place to be. I mean, you can't really see it because but you get like blue lights kind of shown here. It's like a blue theme. It's a very calming theme, which I like. The seats are great. You can get them in leather. Mine are not in leather, a little bit of cloth. I like it. I've got no complaints. There's loads of little, basically it's a Golf, so you get loads of little really cool convenient touches. Only in the Mark 7, I should say, you get stuff like this, underfloor storage. You get that on the driver's seat as well, which is quite cool. It feels like a very premium car, which I like. Nothing feels cheap. It feels really, really good. And at the price point, I can't get enough of these kind of cars. I think they're absolutely brilliant. Hence why I've had it for so long, and it's the thumbnail of the channel, so you can kind of get the idea of that. Infotainment, I'm not going to go too much on that because, to be honest, it's probably out of date. To be fair, we're 2017, so what do you kind of expect? It's not going to be up to standards. We're a few weeks away from 2023 now. You have some cool driving modes, as you can see there. You can kind of tick between them. I normally just go between eco and race. So eco basically just gives you like a softer throttle, so it's just a little bit more of a delay, and it basically puts everything in more like an eco setting. It's not like ready to kind of go immediately. You can even set like the air conditioning to eco and all this kind of stuff just to make it more sort of chilled out. You can change the steering so it's a little bit lighter. You can have an individual setting, so you can kind of mix and match if you want, which I also have. But for me, I quite like race mode. It opens up the exhaust valves to make it a little bit burblier, puts everything in firm setting, puts the steering to quite heavier, so it's a little bit more feel. So that's great. It's a really cool feature, and you get some cool like dials as well to kind of play around with on your screen. You get like a performance gauge, which was available from 2016, so you can kind of see like the temperature and things like that, which I like. You can get the car in 3-door or 5-door. I like 3-door. I think it looks cooler, and to be fair, most of the time I just have me or one other passenger in, so it's not really the end of the world. There's plenty of space back there. 5-door's obviously more practical. You can get them in estate too, which, to be honest, if I had children or something like that, that's kind of what I would look for. I just think it just gives you that more versatility to put, like, I don't know, kids bikes or pushchairs or whatever people do with kids. I don't know, I don't have kids. Maybe, hopefully I'll have some in the future, and I know the Golf R would look after me for that regards. As it's quite wintry and cold, you can see like low sun. It just mixes and matches really in terms of I can show you a little bit of the weather there. You can see more of the frost at the back. The Haldex 4-wheel drive is really good. It just means you just don't waste any power. I quite like that. My car specifically is on 18-inch wheels, which I think is the right thing to go for. It adds that. It's firm and sporty, but it's not as like hardcore, and you're not going to risk like cracking the alloys on like, say, like potholes or things like that, normal day-to-day stuff. And I know the 19 Pretorias, which you can get on these, or any 19-inch wheels, you can risk cracking, so you kind of want to keep it a little bit shorter. Brakes are really, really good. My particular car, I've actually put it on Club Sport S front discs, which were available on the Club Sport S, and an option on Facelift Golf Rs. And that's sort of improved the stopping power, but the stock discs and pads are really, really good. I think like 340mm at the front, so yeah, great stopping power, can't complain. I quite like running these on Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tyres. I'll probably put them on Michelin Pilot Sport 5s once these get worn out. They wear really evenly, being a four-wheel drive car, so I just replace all 4 at once. I've actually done like a 5.5-year kind of service history that I've done on the car as well. Good video on that. The only update to that particular video is I've since done a 4-wheel alignment. So you need to do 4-wheel alignment because it's a 4-wheel drive car. That's the only way it works. Just because the steering was a little bit out of line. Funny enough, when you drive around, things get knocked around and you have to kind of do it. And that's really improved it. Just kept things dead ahead. And I've really enjoyed it since I got that done. Well worth spending the £60 to get that done. It's an absolute no-brainer. Problems, well, the good thing is my car, I sit with you talking about my car being in an absolutely perfect situation, because there was 2 big issues which I knew about from the forums on Golf Rs, and one was if you have a manual gearbox like this one, the clutch is not up for the job because the car has quite a lot of power. It's a little bit heavier because it's a 4-wheel drive car. It's just not up for the job. And I didn't particularly drive this car hard, and I had to change the clutch after 35,000 miles, which is not good. Basically, it was slipping. You kind of notice that when you put your foot down, and then the revs basically spike, but the car doesn't move. It's an issue. So I had to get that changed. You got a budget about £1,000 to get that done. I got a genuine OEM VW replacement, and it was actually a revised part. So hopefully mine lasts longer. You know, I'm 6,000-7,000 miles into that clutch and it's been okay, but yeah, it's not up for the job, and that's where I kind of think DSG would be a little bit better. The other thing that's very, 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 very common is the thermostat and the water pump. They fail. Basically, it's made of like plastic and it's not up for the job, so it will leak. And I always knew that had a possibility, and you find out because you have low coolant and you keep topping up the coolant and it keeps going down and you'll see leak. It's sort of like pink and red, so that's how you can kind of tell. I documented it this year. I've documented it early on as well in my car's ownership, but this time it had completely failed. Again, you've got to budget. It cost me about £800 to get that done. Those are the 2 big things that you've got to do. Other than that, and if those are sorted, you know, fingers crossed, you know, well, I'm all good now, but you know, you never know, it's possibly going to go again. You know, there's no reason why the clutch won't go again because it's the same car, it's the same power. There's no reason why the thermostat housing's not going to go again because I've heard people in the forum saying they keep going. So it's just one of those things, unfortunately. But those are the main bigger sort of bills that you kind of have to expect. But I'm like nearly 6 years in, so it took a while for that to kind of hit home. You know, you have to be doing a fair few miles and, you know, actually driving the car to kind of experience them. Costs in terms of like servicing, it's never been too bad for me. I mean, I'm actually been extremely surprised. An oil and filter service has always been around sort of like £200. It's got full VW main dealer history. Sparks, if you want a major service, so spark plugs, oil filter, just general checks. It's like, I think it's like £350 to £400 for like a major service. The only thing you have to kind of add on for a Golf R compared to anything else is a Haldex service, so make sure your Haldex gets done. Budget around sort of like, I think it's around £100 just to get the Haldex done. That's sort of recommended every 3 years. But if you keep on top of those things, you're pretty good. And that's kind of what I've done, and I've really looked after this car. Like, I will never sell this car because I would never find a car like this again. I do keep my eyes out for Golf Rs online, and the only ones that I see which are even remotely I would consider cost £10,000-15,000 more than this car, so nearly probably double. This car's probably worth top end nearer sort of £20,000 because I've looked after it well, but you can get Golf Rs close to nearly 10, but don't expect to get a good one. And this is at time of filming. You know, personally, I would spend £25,000, £20,000 to £25,000 on one. personally. And that's kind of why I would never sell this, because for me, I'd never find a better one. And yeah, that's kind of why I've done the channel on it. There's only real massive positives to say. It's a great car. It was actually, I'm a huge Porsche fan, and it was actually part designed by one of the Porsche sort of designers as well back in 2014. So that's kind of why I really like it. There's so many sort of like Golf amazing features. So it's a Golf, which is for me one of the best cars that works for everything. It's got a lot of German efficiency about it. It's a very nice car. The leather wheels lasted really, really well. Seats have lasted very well. It just depends how you take care of the car. I've taken care of the car massively well. Obviously, if you're looking to get one, you've just got to make sure. The one thing that I say is look for a car with 1 or 2 owners. That's what I would do. And potentially either get it from a main VW dealer, in which case they would only sell pre-approved cars, so it would have to have a main dealer's history and all that kind of stuff, or get it privately from an enthusiast. That's probably what I would do. You look for a 3 or 4 owner car and you just get it from an independent, I don't know, you're possibly asking for trouble, because ultimately people are going to get these cars and they're going to rag them quite hard. Also try and watch out for modified ones. They can take extra power, and there is a huge tuning industry behind it, but personally for me, I would go for stock OEM, which is exactly what my kind of car is. Yeah, I mean, I just absolutely love it. There's nothing, I love cruising on this car in the motorway. I've been living with a Fiat 500e, if you've checked out some previous videos, and on the motorway, that thing, I can't believe, like I said, it was okay, but the wind noise and stuff from a lower level car compared to this is just so refined and smooth. I can't get over how great it is, and I'm fortunate to have the car. And on top of everything, as an ownership proposition for residuals, which is the biggest cost that you have, I've owned this car outright since I bought it, and I paid £24,950. So it just had over 1,000 miles. And today, I probably wouldn't get too far off 20. So that's pretty good for 43,000 miles and nearly 6 years. I'll take that all day long, even with a few of the bigger bills that I've had, as I've mentioned, the thermostat housing and the clutch. So that's my ownership review. I could talk about this car forever, hence why I've done a channel which is pretty much started with it. That's what the thumbnail's about. Ask me any questions you want. I'm happy to help people out on this. The one thing I would say is I'd 100% recommend people going for it, but just like anything, you've just got to do your due diligence and make sure you're getting the right thing. I've loved it as an ownership proposition, and I will continue to love it going forward.